I'm Juanita. Standing here in my penthouse, watching as federal agents led Jamal away in handcuffs, I'm reminded of the long and painful journey that led me to this moment. It's been a wild ride, filled with betrayal, heartbreak, and finally, justice. My family always seemed to have it all. My parents, Henry and Lydia, lived in a sprawling mansion in Connecticut, throwing lavish parties and rubbing shoulders with the elite. My younger sister, Isabella, was the golden child, always in the spotlight with her designer clothes and perfect life. And then there was me, the black sheep, the one who didn't fit in. I worked as a senior risk analyst at a major Wall Street hedge fund, a job that my family never truly understood. They saw me as a failure, someone who couldn't keep up with their high-flying lifestyle. But little did they know, I held the key to their entire fake empire. It all came to a head on Christmas Eve. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses. The tree in the foyer was a masterpiece, decorated by a professional designer. But beneath the surface, it was all a lie. I was making my way back from the kitchen with a glass of sparkling water when I had to pass by Isabella. She was standing in the middle of the walkway, holding court with our parents' friends. As I brushed past her, she stopped speaking mid-sentence. I saw that malicious smirk on her face, and I knew what was coming. In one swift motion, she tilted her crystal goblet and poured a splash of red wine down the front of her own white silk dress. Then she let out a blood-curdling shriek, and the entire room fell silent. She turned to me, her face twisted with fury, and slapped me across the face. The force of the impact made my head snap to the side, and I tasted blood in my mouth. "Are you blind or stupid?" she screamed. "You ruined my $500 dress on purpose because you're a jealous loser." I stood there, stunned, as my parents rushed over. Instead of asking what had happened, they immediately took Isabella's side. Lydia, my mother, pushed past me and wrapped her arms around Isabella, cooing, "Oh, my poor baby. Look what she did to your beautiful dress." I tried to defend myself, gesturing to the shattered glass on the floor. "She poured the wine on herself, Mom. I barely even touched her." But my words fell on deaf ears. Lydia scoffed. "Don't lie to me. You've always been clumsy and jealous of your sister. Now you've ruined the entire holiday." Just then, my brother-in-law, Jamal, stepped in. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man who loved to play the role of a self-made tech genius. He wore a custom-tailored velvet blazer and a massive diamond-encrusted Rolex on his wrist. "Come on, Juanita," he said, his voice dripping with fake pity. "There's no need to act out just because you're struggling. Your little desk job doesn't pay much, but you don't have to take it out on my wife." I looked at him, then at my mother, and said calmly, "You're all delusional. I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do." My mother's face flushed with anger. "Yes, you will. You'll get on your knees right now and apologize to your sister, and then you'll write her a check for $5,000 to replace that dress." I let out a sharp laugh. "No. I'm not getting on my knees, and I'm not giving you a single dime." My mother was shocked by my defiance. "Excuse me?" she whispered dangerously. I repeated louder, I said no. "I'm not apologizing to a grown woman throwing a toddler tantrum." Jamal scoffed. "See, this is why you're always alone. You have zero class. You're a disgrace to this family." My mother stepped forward, pointing to the door. "If you refuse to pay your sister, then you can leave right now. Go wait outside in the freezing cold until your father decides how to handle you." Just then, my father, Henry, stepped into the living room. He was a man who commanded every room he entered through fear and financial intimidation. He wore a bespoke suit and held a crystal glass of scotch. "What is all this screaming about?" he demanded. Isabella immediately started sobbing. "Daddy, Juanita attacked me. She ruined my dress and won't pay for it because she's jealous of my life." My father didn't even look at the evidence on the floor. He just stared at me with icy disgust. You're a complete failure, Juanita. You always have been. Every holiday, you manage to ruin it with your bitter attitude. I stood my ground. I didn't do anything. She poured the wine on herself to create a scene. My father slammed his glass down on a side table. Don't call your sister a liar in my house. She's building a legacy with a successful husband. What are you doing? Pushing papers at a desk, making pennies. The hypocrisy of his words was almost laughable. He was standing in a house that was technically owned by my hedge fund due to his massive unpaid mortgage. He opened the front door, and a blast of freezing wind blew into the foyer. Get out, he ordered. I felt a profound shift inside me. For years, I had craved their validation, but standing there, looking at their arrogant faces, I felt nothing. I walked over to the coat closet, retrieved my wool overcoat, and slipped it on. I walked past my father without a word and stepped out onto the snow-covered porch. The doors slammed shut behind me, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. I got into my car and drove away. As I sat in the car, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Isabella. You really know how to ruin a good time, Juanita. Enjoy driving back to your miserable little apartment. You're an embarrassment to all of us. Don't bother coming back. Reading those words, I realized that my sacrifice and loyalty meant nothing to them. They actively despised me. I reached into the back seat, pulled out my company-issued encrypted laptop, and logged into the restricted administrative portal of my firm. I knew that my family was drowning in debt. 2 years ago, when their original lender was about to foreclose on their mansion, I had secretly stepped in and purchased their defaulted mortgage, along with Jamal's business loans. I had bundled all their toxic debt into an obscure holding account to keep them from being evicted. But they had used the time I gave them to buy diamond watches, host extravagant parties, and treat me like garbage. It was time for them to face the consequences. I typed in my father's and Jamal's names into the search bar. The master dossier showed that they had over $4 million in unpaid principal and hadn't made a single payment in 24 months. The only reason they were still living in that mansion was a temporary grace period mandate that I had manually entered into their file. I took a deep breath and deleted the grace period code. The protective barrier was gone. The automated collection protocol recognized the massive defaults, and I escalated the process. I froze all their financial accounts and prepared a suspicious activity report for the federal authorities. I scheduled the execution for 7 o'clock on December 26th, the morning after Christmas, to ensure total surprise. 36 hours later, the plan was set in motion. Isabella was at a high-end French designer boutique, trying to make a purchase with her credit card. But the card was declined, and so were all her other cards. The boutique manager informed her that her accounts were frozen due to federal compliance protocols. Isabella's perfect elite life began to crumble right in front of her. Meanwhile, my father, Henry, woke up to a wall of high-priority notifications from his bank. His platinum checking account was suspended, and his savings and equity line of credit were frozen. As he was trying to figure out what was happening, a courier delivered a foreclosure notice. The bank was seizing their mansion due to 24 months of defaulted payments. Just then, federal agents arrived at the house. They were looking for Jamal, who was suspected of multiple counts of federal wire fraud, bank fraud, and corporate embezzlement. Jamal tried to deny everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. The agents found that Jamal had been using the company's funds to lease a luxury condominium in Miami for his 22-year-old mistress, Mia. He had also been siphoning money into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, labeling the transfers as international consulting fees. My parents were in shock. They couldn't believe what was happening. They tried to blame me, but I was done being their scapegoat. When they called me, my father, Henry, screamed at me, "What did you do? You brought this disaster into our house." I calmly replied, "I know everything. I know about the $4,200,000 residential mortgage you defaulted on, the $2 million in venture capital loans Jamal secured using falsified assets, and the money you stole from my college trust fund. I instructed him to look at the foreclosure notice and read the authorizing signature. When he realized it was me, he was completely broken. A short time later, they came to my penthouse, expecting to find a struggling clerk. But instead, they were met with a luxurious, high-end apartment that showed my true financial power. Jamal tried to threaten me, saying he would sue me for corporate sabotage. But I reminded him that he didn't have the money to hire an attorney, and that Oak Tree Capital, my firm, had the legal right to liquidate his assets. My mother then tried to play the guilt card, saying that Isabella was pregnant and that I had to help them. But I knew it was a lie. I had access to Isabella's medical billing history, and I knew she had recently had a cosmetic surgery procedure that was forbidden for pregnant women. I showed them a 500-page dossier that detailed all their financial transactions over the last 10 years. It showed how my father had used my college trust fund to keep Jamal's fake company afloat, and how Jamal had been embezzling money for his own personal use. Isabella was in denial at first, but when I showed her the evidence of Jamal's mistress and the offshore accounts, she completely lost it. She attacked Jamal, and he pushed her away, causing her to fall against the kitchen island. My father had a heart-breaking moment as he watched his golden child and his son-in-law's fake empire crumble before his eyes. He collapsed onto his knees, gasping for air. Jamal, in a desperate attempt to destroy the evidence, started tearing up the papers. But I told him that the master files were securely encrypted and uploaded to the federal servers. Just then, 2 FBI agents stepped out of my office. They had heard everything, and they were there to arrest Jamal. Jamal tried to resist, but he was quickly overpowered and handcuffed. As the agents led Jamal away, Isabella was left broken, realizing that her perfect life was a lie. My mother, seeing that her fake empire was gone, tried to beg me to save them. But I had no sympathy left. I called the building security and had them escort my family out of my penthouse. 6 months have passed since then. Jamal is serving a 10-year sentence in a federal penitentiary. Isabella is working a minimum-wage retail job and living in a cramped studio apartment. My parents have been evicted from their mansion and now live in a small, depressing retirement apartment. I'm finally at peace. I've learned that cutting ties with toxic family members was not a tragedy but a rebirth. I've built my own fortress, and I'm surrounded by people who respect and support me. I've realized that blood doesn't always make a family. Loyalty, respect, and unconditional love do. If my story resonates with you, I encourage you to share your own experiences in the comments. Remember, your peace is always worth the price of admission.